experienced here. There are earthquakes from time to time, but we have never, ever felt anything on the magnitude, the literal magnitude of what we experienced today. It was a beautiful spring day. It was sunny outside. I had just come home from a little errand to the grocery store, and all of a sudden, bam, it just hit. And you could tell this was different instantly from other little tremors that we've had before. I mean, it just picked up in intensity. It ramped up. The gentle shaking, and things started coming off the shelves. Things started falling off our desks. And you could hear this strange, eerie creaking sound of all of the buildings all around us as they were kind of shaken by this, by the tremor of the ground. And it was something I hope I never have to hear again. The ground was rolling for an extended period of time. I wasn't exactly sure what to do or where to go. I'd never been prepared for anything like this. My wife and I stood outside and basically held on to the outside of our house. You couldn't even stand up. I mean, literally at the peak of these waves that were washing over the ground, you literally could not stay on your feet. You had to kind of crouch down in a ball or put your back against something so you didn't fall. And that's exactly what we did for the length of the duration of it, which I would say was about probably a minute to 2 minutes. It felt like a lot longer than that. What are your first thoughts?
Well, the only thing you can really compare it to is the Sumatra Andaman earthquake. You had that up there a minute ago, and it's instructive to take some lessons from that. There was a tsunami similar to this one. In addition to that, about 3 months after the Sumatra earthquake, there was another earthquake, magnitude, I believe, around 8.4 that occurred. So, you know, these things don't happen in isolation. In Japan in 1836, there was a famous sequence of 2 earthquakes, larger than magnitude 8, the Ansei 1 and 2 earthquakes, which were separated by 36 hours. Earthquakes are clustered in space and time, so unfortunately for Japan, it's quite likely that there will be major aftershocks. There have already been some, but even some as large as 8, and those also could cause damage and destruction and tsunamis. In addition, there was an earthquake that was not recorded by any instrument, but we know that it existed. It happened in between 1699 and 1700 AD. We think it was the January 26th date, actually, at about 9:30 in the evening. There was a magnitude 9 earthquake that occurred off the coast of Oregon and Washington and caused a tsunami not only there. We see the evidence in the drowned forests, but also it was recorded in Japan about 4 hours later. At that time in Japan, it was called the orphan tsunami because they didn't know where it came from. But we now know that it was actually that earthquake in Oregon and Washington. It was about 3 or 4 feet. The tsunami was about 3 or 4 feet high in Japan. So what we have here today is the reverse situation. The earthquake is in Japan, about magnitude 8.9, and we can possibly, with waves of 3 to 4 feet high. So, it's a scary thing, real time. I mean, it's just amazing images. It's hard to believe that there aren't thousands of people killed in this thing. I mean, it's like equivalent of megaton nuclear explosion. These things are just incredibly destructive.
Mr. Rundle, question here. T.J. Holmes here, CNN in New York. You mentioned the west coast of California, and for our American viewers, and certainly will have concerns, we see these every once in a while, these tsunami warnings, but can you give us more perspective of what they could possibly expect there? Because this is some scary stuff to see these types of pictures coming in Japan. I know this is certainly a ways away, and you talked about 3 to 4 feet high waves, but can you give us an idea of what kind of impact the west coast of the U.S. and maybe even Hawaii could be looking at?
Sure. Hello?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Rundle.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, so what one could expect is that the water level would rise about 3 or 4 feet, and it would stay at about that level for maybe 15 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, and then recede over another 10 or 15 minutes, and then come back and recede and cycle. So if you happen to near the ocean, basically at sea level, I mean, this could you could expect this to have a major impact on your home and even cause damage and death. So you need to consider that in the thought of possibly evacuating to avoid that.
Well, we're going to keep you around, John Rundle, seismologist and expert in all of this, to help put in perspective what we are seeing this morning. Thanks so much for talking to us. Mary,
Sure.
Now we want to go to Kyung La. She was in Tokyo when this quake struck. She joins us on the phone now. What is the situation like there, Kyung?
Well, what Tokyo is going through right now, Karen, is now several hours after the first quake struck, is that there is a big problem, at least within the city of Tokyo, with infrastructure. The train lines are down, highways are cut off, and so it's extremely difficult to travel around this city. It's a problem because Tokyo has 13 million people in it. A lot of people, like New York City, have to commute outside of the immediate city center. And so what we have here are a lot of people just walking it out on foot. They have to go to the daycare centers to pick up their kids and then try to figure out how to head home. So what we have as far as a crisis within the city of Tokyo is an infrastructure problem. North of us, you're seeing those devastating pictures. That is a different sort of disaster. That is now a search and rescue operation. Night has fallen here. It is extremely difficult. It's cold. They've got to pluck the people off of the buildings. They've got to try to assess the damage and realize that this is still an ongoing disaster. It's sort of ceased a little bit in the last hour or so, but we're still feeling aftershocks here in Tokyo. So what you have to also do is try to keep the people of Japan calm. I've heard the Prime Minister come on the television and say, everyone remain calm. What they do not want is a second disaster on top of that, and that being a disaster of crisis, so of panic. And so those are the big challenges right now now that we're talking several hours after this quake.
Okay, we're on the line now with our Kyung La, who was in Tokyo for us when this earthquake took place. It was felt there, even though it was some 230 miles away and offshore. Kyung La, another question to you here. You talked about, of course, the shaking and the difficulty in the city of Tokyo with 13 million people, but you talked about the other disaster just to the north with that wave of water we are starting to see. Just how populated is that area where the wave of water is now rushing through, that tsunami is coming through? How populated of an area are we talking about?
It's a bit spread out, but that region has 1 million people in it. It's a community that is known for as a fishing community, but there are a lot of people who are there. So this is a populated place. This is a country also that along the coastline, you don't have those big, wide open beaches that you think of in other parts of Asia. The coastline here does tend to have concrete walls, and there are also gates that shut down. So the tsunami probably could have been far worse were this country not as prepared. But as far as the immediate impact on that city up there, there are 1 million people up there. We're hearing a wide variety of numbers being reported by the local authorities. So at this point, we have not been able to confirm exactly how many missing, how many dead. Another problem is trying to reach anyone. Virtually all the mobile lines are down. As far as, I should say, they're jammed. Everyone's trying to use their mobile phone, their cell phone. The landlines are extraordinarily difficult to get through. Here in the Bureau, we have a number of landlines out, but this is one of the only ones that's working. So it is a struggle trying to reach those people, trying to get in touch with those people. And a lot of those people up north have relatives down here in Tokyo, and you can see that that's a bit of the panic, that you can't reach your loved one and you just don't know what's happening up there.
There are sort of two crises. A situation in Tokyo, as you said, where the earthquake hit, and we're looking at a refinery on fire. And then further north in those farmlands, the flooding because of the tsunami. How equipped are they in Japan to deal with what you have described? Are there calls for international help at this point?
There have been calls for international help. We know that the Red Cross, both the domestic Red Cross and the International Red Cross, are already on their way up. The U.S. military has been informed. I'm at this point not quite clear on what the U.S. military aid involvement is going to be. There has been a wide net reached out. There is an extensive system in place here to react to any sort of crisis. So those systems are already in place. This is a country where earthquakes are the norm. You think about how many earthquakes there are in California. Well, I lived in California, and I've lived here, and I can tell you there are 10 times the number of earthquakes that you feel here in Japan that you do in California. So people here are used to earthquakes, but they're not used to this size of earthquake. I was in Tokyo Station, one of the busiest train stations in Japan, when this earthquake struck, that very first one. And I can tell you the shaking went on for several minutes. Signs were shaking back and forth, were flickering. People were looking very alarmed and panicked, which is very unusual in Japan because of the regularity of earthquakes here. that's what really elevates this to a different sort of crisis. And we're miles, hundreds of miles away from the epicenter. So you can imagine what that must have felt like in that town where the tsunami is striking, the amount of panic and crisis they must feel at this moment.
All right, our Kyung Law for us in Tokyo. We will continue to check in with you. We appreciate you this morning, but again, our Kyung Law kind of illustrating the scope of this disaster that's really unfolding on two different fronts. You have the initial earthquake, an 8.9 magnitude quake that rocked Japan, of course, just off some 230 miles away from Tokyo. She said she felt the shaking in Tokyo for several minutes there. But then you have this wall of water, this tsunami that literally is sweeping everything in its path in parts of the country. A disaster now unfolding on several fronts. Christine Romans, we're going to go ahead and bring you in here as well, because this will have an impact on other things. Yes, the human toll is what we need to certainly be focused on, and we are doing that first and foremost. But this will have an impact as well as people keep an eye on what this is going to do to markets right now.
Well, and it's more than just markets. It's the economic destruction within the country of Japan. This is a massive industrialized.
Stopped. They also had major problems with landslides, people being buried in the aftermath of that. Right now, the confirmed number of people killed, 32, but many experts expect that to go much higher. Again, these are pictures that you're looking at from Tokyo, but this quake then triggered a massive tsunami. 13-foot wall of water having a devastating impact along the northeast coastline. And we're going to show you those pictures now where the waves just literally devouring this farmland several miles inland, washing away homes, cars, trucks. You saw huge ships, anything in its path. And again, we'll be showing you more of those dramatic pictures in just a moment. Also, just a new update for you. The U.S. Geological Survey is confirming now that a smaller earthquake, a magnitude 4.6, hit Hawaii. They're saying that this happened at 10:58 p.m. Hawaii time, and they are also issuing tsunami warnings for this earthquake. For Hawaii and the U.S. coastline. This stretches all the way from the California-Mexico border all the way up to Alaska. Meantime, back in Japan, near Tokyo, incredible pictures of an oil refinery burning out of control. Japan also had 4 nuclear plants that were closest to the epicenter of this quake. They claim now that those were shut down safely. And the Prime Minister saying that as of right now, there are no reports of any radioactive material leaking from that power plant.
And again, this was about 230 miles away. All away from Tokyo, a city of 13 million people. Our reporter, Kyung Law, is there. Kyung, you were talking a little earlier that, in fact, there was about several minutes it felt like this earthquake was shaking. We talked to another gentleman a short time ago who said, Japan is pretty structurally sound. They know how to do this, if you will, and Tokyo is pretty much intact. We have a two-pronged disaster, if you will. We've got the tsunami and we've got the earthquake. Let's start with the earthquake. What kind of shape, in fact, is Tokyo in right now?
Well, I can tell you that right now there's an infrastructure problem in Tokyo. But before I get to that, let me tell you what was a shared experience in this city of 13 million people. And I just want to give you a small snapshot. And remember, we are hundreds of miles away from the epicenter of the quake. But just take a look at what happened inside our bureau. We haven't picked up anything. The papers all started flying. The walls were shaking. The lights were flickering. Back over here where we have our tapes, they have all fallen off the shelves. And this is, again, a very large distance from where the epicenter of the quake was. And this is just one small snapshot of what people across the city felt. There were reports of damage of some ceilings falling. There are many people who felt the shaking for several minutes. I was in one of Tokyo's busiest train stations, Tokyo Station, and in that station, we felt the shaking for several minutes. The train lines were shut down. The signs were swinging back and forth. The lights were flickering. You could hear children crying. And though there wasn't panic, because people are quite used to earthquakes, even an earthquake of this size, and this did rise to a higher level of concern, this was certainly something sizable. This was different. And especially when the train lines stopped and the underground was told, everybody get out. That's when people knew that we are on the verge of a national disaster. Because this is a country where if your train is just 15 seconds late, there's something wrong. That usually tells people that there's something wrong. So to have an entire train line in one of the most connected cities in the world completely shut down, that is highly unusual, and that raises concern for people. So in the streets of Tokyo, people are on foot. They're trying to get home, but many people, just like New York City, have to commute a great distance, and it is very difficult to get home tonight because all the taxis are taken. There are no train lines, and as far as what we can tell, it is just very, very difficult to get around. So a lot of people walking around trying to figure out what they're going to do. That's the crisis in Tokyo. And so the Prime Minister has urged people to remain calm and just move about your business as best as you can, given the situation. The crisis up north is a different magnitude because of what we've seen, the tsunami, the massive debris that's moving across that region. That is a search and rescue operation. It is still winter here, winter conditions, and they are trying to do the search and rescue now in the dark. So it is going to be a totally different disaster up north, and we may not understand the scope of it for 8 hours until there's light.
All right, our Kyung Law, we appreciate the update from you. We will continue to check in with you plenty throughout this morning. We appreciate you showing us around that newsroom as well. A lot of places look like that, but again, it's the pictures that are outside right now with these tsunami warnings that are really just striking this morning.
Yeah, it makes you wonder how you even begin to, A, find those people and B, clean up after that type of devastation. Thank you, Kyung. Meantime, tsunami warnings issued for the entire U.S. West Coast now. John Rundle is a seismologist and professor at UC Davis. He's also the founder of the earthquake research group, openhazards.com, and he joins us live from Santa Fe again this morning. And again, we did confirm, in fact, by the USGS that a 4.6 quake did hit in Hawaii as well.
Yes. There's expected to be earthquakes in many locations around the world, and of course, some of them are likely associated with this major earthquake, and some of them would have occurred anyway. So, earthquakes can strike essentially without warning, and this one basically did. I'm not aware of any foreshocks that occurred prior to it that were recognized. Japan, in particular, is a place where the earthquake's seismicity roughly occurs at 10 times the rate that you see in California and the U.S. In the Northridge earthquake, one of the interesting things back in '94 in that earthquake, that was a magnitude 6.7, the largest and most destructive one to strike, the most destructive one anyway, to strike Southern California in a couple of decades. Many of the steel-reinforced buildings in downtown Los Angeles suffered damage to their steel structures, the steel I-beams and whatnot, the joints cracked and so forth, and that wasn't apparent until earthquake engineers began taking apart the buildings, basically looking to see what had happened. So even for buildings like in places like Tokyo and Sendai that may have appeared to stand up following this earthquake, once they start looking at those in some detail, they may find serious structural damage, which might indicate that whole buildings would have to be torn down and essentially rebuilt, adding to the damage and the cost here.
And Mr. Rundle, you used this word just a moment ago, and again to our viewers as we continue to watch these pictures. Again, this is several miles inland where this wave of water is washing just everything with it in its path. But again, Mr. Rundle on the line with us, a seismologist. Sir, you used this word foreshocks. There were foreshocks apparently leading up to this earthquake off the coast of Japan. Several days they saw several of these foreshocks, if you will. That might not be a term a lot of people are familiar with, but those foreshocks, did those kind of give us an indication that something big was coming?
Well, the problem is foreshocks don't stand up and wave a little flag and say, I'm a foreshock. Essentially, they're earthquakes, just like any other earthquakes. Now, in retrospect, we can go back and look and say, well, these earthquakes occurred in the epicentral region of the large earthquake, and therefore we think they were probably associated with that large earthquake. They were probably an impending precursor, but at the time those foreshocks occurred, that wasn't necessarily apparent. So that's difficulty. Foreshocks look like any other earthquakes, and so it's just not clear, you know, when an earthquake, as it's occurring, you know, when a smaller earthquake is just a smaller earthquake, and when it signals that something larger is about to happen.
I want to ask you another question. We were getting you know, this information from the government about these tsunami arrival times, I guess you could say, but it's important to note that just because they're saying this could these arrival times happen, it doesn't mean that an actual wave is imminent, right? I mean, so we have this breakdown of where they may be coming, including areas around Auckland, New Zealand, all the way into other parts, all the way down to South America. What exactly does it mean for these locales that are getting to see this?
Well, our job at the USGS is to report on the earthquakes, and of course that's one part of this disaster. Is not just the first event itself, as big as it was, but also these the constant aftershocks. I mean, we've already had one over magnitude 7. That would be a big earthquake in its own right. We've had something like a dozen that are larger than magnitude 6. At the same time, the NOAA Tsunami Warning Centers, as you pointed out, are tracking the progress of these waves across the Pacific. This is a system that's been largely built out since that Sumatra event, recognition of the challenge associated with it. The warnings that have been issued for the U.S. coast, for so many of the islands in the Western Pacific, some of them the waves have already reached there. The big challenge is that while we can track the wave across the ocean very well, there's a tremendous amount of variability in the coastline. So the most important thing, if there's a warning there, is just people need to move away from the coasts.
Last night that had only 15 miles down.
Well, you know, that's very significant, of course, particularly for an onshore event, because the population is that amount of water that's going to be moved associated with the tsunami itself. In this case, the shallowness of the event is simply, it makes it that much closer to population, to transfer that energy directly to both the water column and then, of course, with the shaking reaching the populated areas.
All right, Mr. Applegate, we appreciate you. I don't think you're going to go too far. We'd like to check back in with you as we continue our coverage this morning, but thank you.
Sure thing.
Although military personnel in Japan have been accounted for, U.S. military personnel, our Barbara Starr is live at the Pentagon with some new information. I know you had been talking to us, mobilizing for this relief effort. What else is going on, Barbara?
Well, Karen, TJ, we do have some additional news. What we now know is a U.S. Navy and Air Force airfields, 2 of them in Japan, now accepting commercial airliners to land at these military airfields because they cannot land in Tokyo's commercial airports. Those airports, apparently, the runways are full of planes that were there and could not leave because of the situation. So, you know, think of it this way. As this unfolded overnight, airliners were in the sky on their routine flights into Japan, but had nowhere to land. So the U.S. military now accepting commercial airliners for landing at their facilities. We also know now that there has been some evacuation of military personnel from low-lying areas on Okinawa. Those are mainly Marine Corps personnel. Everybody accounted for there, but some precautionary evacuations. I just spoke to U.S. military officials in Hawaii who are monitoring all of this. They are getting ready. They're about another 2 hours looking at the clock. They're under a tsunami warning in Hawaii. Military personnel, like everyone else in Hawaii, taking precautions, moving to higher ground, but they have made a decision that they don't think they will have to evacuate ships out of Pearl Harbor, that they think they can ride all of this out. However, they tell me that they are watching the Tsunami Warning Center and they're watching the waves every 15 minutes, and they will make their calculations throughout the day as this situation moves further to the east. TJ, Karen?
All right, Barbara Starr with the update from the Pentagon. We're going to check in with our Christine Romans on that same issue of airports here in just a moment as well. But before we get to that, we need to turn to the mayor of Honolulu, Mr. Carlisle. Mayor Carlisle on the line with us here now. Sir, we appreciate you giving us an update. Just tell me, how are you and your citizens preparing for what's coming?
Well, once the first siren went off, the first warning siren, we began an active evacuation of all coastal inundation zones. And since this is an event that we have to confront on a somewhat regular basis, we actually have the inundation zones in the front of our telephone books. And so we're having the police, ambulance, fire, all doing those things that we need to do to assist people get out of the inundation zone and to safer ground.
How concerned are you right now? I know you probably are tracking all of this information, both from the USGS and from the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center. Explain for us, when we talk about the potential height of waves, 5 feet, how much of a concern is it?
Well, we get a number of predictions on occasion, and sometimes they pan out and sometimes they don't. So we have to basically gear this to what is a worst-case scenario that's reasonable with what we understand the circumstances are to be. And that information led us to believe that evacuation was appropriate and to take all necessary precautions. So one of the things about tsunamis is that they're very, very unpredictable. And you can't tell how many waves there are going to be. You can't tell whether the heights are going to be the same. You can't tell which wave is going to be the one that creates the greatest difference, or is going to create the greatest damage. And then finally, you don't know how long the tsunamis are going to keep on coming in. So it is a very, very difficult situation to confront, and it's precautions for the safety of human life that have to be at the forefront of our thinking.
Again, Mayor Peter Carlisle, Mayor of Honolulu, on the line with us here. Sir, that was fascinating to hear. Clearly, you all are prepared for things like this, given that you say the telephone books even have the inundation zones right there in the front for people to know when they need to get out. How many people are we talking about are in those particular evacuation zones? How many people need to be on the move right now? Do you have an idea?
I can't give you an idea on that. The population of the island is 920 million, but it's difficult to say how many people are in those areas that are, excuse me, I'm sorry, 920,000, not million. And then but the key is the people who are in the inundation zones, we don't track that.
Again, Mayor Carlisle, we appreciate you hopping on the line, giving us an update. A lot of people concerned about our fellow citizens there in Hawaii, but we appreciate you checking in with us. Thanks so much, and good luck out there.
So clearly,
my pleasure, and I appreciate your good wishes.
Yes, sir.
Oh, absolutely. Well, good luck to you for sure. And they obviously have a preparation level, something that we, can only imagine because they're used to this. But there are still some big impacts taking place. We can't control Mother Nature. We've learned that the hard way many times. Christine Romans joins us more with how the earthquake is potentially impacting some of the airports.
Now, if you've been seeing a lot of pictures of Sendai Airport in Japan, this airport has been closed. These are the pictures you're seeing with the people standing on their roof. You can see the air traffic control tower and what looks like water washing over the runways, washing through the parking lots. That airport is closed because of the floodwaters, because of the tsunami. But Tokyo's Narita Airport has canceled all flights for the rest of the day. If you are flying internationally, please check. You heard Barbara Starr report that some of the passenger planes are being allowed to, commercial planes are being allowed to land at a lot of transatlantic flights, international flights that are trying to be rerouted and find places for those to land now. Their flights have resumed at Tokyo's Haneda Airport, and Kansai International Airport is operating normally. But again, all of the big major carriers are saying that there have been flight changes, there have been flights that have been rerouted to other places. You're going to need to really check there overall. Watching also the markets. The stock market in Japan fell in the few minutes, in the small time that it had after the earthquake struck and before the market closed. Those futures, the Nikkei futures, it trades in futures, down about 3% right now. Watching that to see what the impact will be. Obviously, this is the third largest economy in the world, $5.5 trillion economy, still trying to figure out what the extent of the damage is in Japan, even as the story now looks to the tsunami and where it could be moving and what kind of damage could be happening there. So.